What's left to eat? We eat because we're happy, we eat because we're sad, we eat because we're lonely, we eat because we're together. We eat for all these different reasons, and we're finding out that other than pleasure and because we're hungry, we've got a lot to face up to. We really do. And what can we eat? And how do we do it in a way that serves us? I'd like to do a little section called Fast Food with Go Power, and give you some of the solutions, although tomorrow night and the next night we'll really be focusing on the solutions from the social issues and the homemaking issues and the recipe issues and the desire to make it pretty and the needs for variety and on and on. It would be terrible to have a night where we identify the problems and not give some solutions. So there really are a lot of solutions available. I stress because I know how I was when I first started hearing about food reform. When I first started hearing other people talking to me about food reform, about changing my diet, the first thing I wanted to do was dig my heels in and say, no, you're not taking me there. I see where you're going, I'm not going. So I stress repeatedly the concept of direction, not speed. I stress repeatedly the idea of transition, that it's a matter of moving towards your goal rather than simply moving away from something or trying to totally embrace something before you're completely ready. I only know of one man in my whole life that could jump to the top of the Empire State Building in a single bound. The rest of us use the stairs, but when we get there, we're at the top. What more do we want? The view is the same from the top, no matter how long it took you to get to the top. Some of these strategies have worked well for everyone. Some of them only work well for some people. But everyone finds some of them that will work. And I want to spray you with some ideas of different things that will work. The idea of lowering the fat in the diet is an issue that means a lot. It's something that I come back to again and again, and over the next couple we'll give you a lot more reasons why that's such an important issue. One way to do that is to incorporate meals that have no additional fat or insignificant fat, because we understand that there is in fact fat in lettuce and there is in fact fat in an apple, but this is so close to a statistical zero that we count it as insignificant. It's trace at most. The idea of an intentional no-fat meal will help you to make a new relationship with the messages that your body is sending you. Most of us have been raised on relatively high-fat meals. Yes, they may have been standard American diet, and we shifted over to vegetarian and over to vegan and over to raw, but through that whole transition, we changed what we ate, but we didn't change the caloronutrient content of what we ate. In fact, on average, the amount of fat in the diet rose rather than fell. And it rose for the very reasons that I mentioned earlier of us not having the abilities to accommodate higher volumes of food, us not having a model of someone else having gone before us saying that it's perfectly normal to sit down and make a complete meal of all the fruit you care for, or it's perfectly normal to make a meal of all the tomatoes you care for. Yes, that's a perfectly acceptable meal. We don't have this image in our head. We don't have an experiential relationship. We know how many slices of pizza it takes to fill us up. We know how many hamburgers it takes to fill us up. We've had that experience. We know that if there's 10 people coming over for dinner and we're making pasta, exactly how much pasta to make. But we don't know if there's 10 people coming over to dinner and the only thing you're serving is blueberries, how many pints of blueberries should I get? This takes practice. Oh, and it's a big difference depending on who's coming over. Oh, a bunch of raw fooders are coming over. Better get a bunch of blueberries. My relatives are coming over. None of them are going to eat a pint of blueberries. They'll be stuffed. They'll be filled. They've had more than enough. I could never eat some. Granted, an hour later, they'll be starving. They'll have left my house and go, now let's go get something to eat. You know? They'll have watched me eat 4 or 5 or 6 pints of those darn blueberries because I love them so much. And still they'll just pick on a few and say, oh, I couldn't eat anymore, I'm so full. Because they're intensely not trained to consuming high water, high fiber, low fat foods. So the no fat meal, the meal made of fruits and vegetables, not including the fatty fruits, or the extremely low fat meal even as a transition, will affect not only the way you relate to the food, will affect more than your ability to receive the signals saying, hey, this is satiation. I'm surprised all you had was orange juice. All you had was watermelon. Look back at that meal. The only thing you ate was bananas. And yes, indeed, you are satisfied. It's almost shocking. Gosh, I look back and that was all you had was peaches, and it was enough to make a meal. Okay, it was a lot of peaches. But it left you more satisfied than any other food could ever leave you. In fact, for the reasons we've mentioned of raising volume, raising nutrients, raising sugar, it leaves you totally satiated, with the one exception of our addiction to the stimulation of the non-healthy foods to which we've become accustomed. And it's kind of a funny thing that, Rosalind told me about a client who made a meal of bananas and said, I'm full, I'm totally full, I couldn't eat any more. I was completely stuffed, but totally unsatisfied. And it took some practice for me to become satisfied making a meal of a food. So I'm going to sit down, eat that food till I'm done. It took a lot of practice. As a child, I was a notorious eater. I could out-eat most of my friends, not only in volume but in frequency. I went out with friends at the end of a softball game, and we went to the corner tavern that had a street entrance. Because we were kids, we weren't allowed in the tavern per se, but we could go into the street entrance to the kitchen, and we all had the Italian food that was available to us from that market. And we had dinner after having played ball all afternoon, and we had a big dinner. And then I realized that I was supposed to go home because it was later than I had told my mom I was going to be home. It was all of 2 blocks, and I ran home and walked in the door and remembered why my mom needed me home. We had company over for dinner. So I just sat down and ate dinner again and never even mentioned that I had just had dinner. I could eat tremendous volume. The funny thing was, the only time I stopped snacking was to sit down and eat a meal. That was it. I told you, it was the funny thing. And I literally got up from the table and went to the pantry and started eating snacks and sat in front of the TV and just ate dry cereal or whatever it was and literally ate all day. If I was in school and I couldn't eat all day, okay, that one little time. But as soon as I came home, I ate, and I ate right up until dinner, and I ate right through dinner, and I ate right after dinner until I went to bed. And it was a continual snacking, a ravenousness that I would never wish upon anyone. As I changed the quality of what I ate, people ask me now, what do you eat? How often do you eat? And I go, generally twice a day. But do you snack? No. Well, why? Because I'm not interested. I'm happy from the last meal. I'm happy until the next meal. And it took literally years for me that I was surprised, being that satisfied, from eating so simply. But having been on both sides of the fence, I realized I'd rather be satisfied eating simply than unsatisfied eating anything and everything. It didn't work for me. I'd rather be healthy eating simply. I'd rather be able to think clearly and have all my senses work and maintain the fitness levels that I had when I get together with my high school buddies that they all lost a long time ago. They're not even thinking about it. Their kids have lost it. It's getting scary. I knew it was getting scary when people started calling me sir. The low-fat, the no-fat meal. The low-fat, the no-fat day. If we're attempting to create a diet that has a total fat intake of 10%, it doesn't mean that we have to have 10% fat with every meal, or even on every day. If you have 2 zero-fat days in the course of a week, you might also have 3 10% fat days, and 2 days where you let it go and have 20% fat. And it's still coming out to a 10% fat diet. In the course of a month, we're talking about diets that are being looked at. The old concept that you have to get every nutrient at every meal has long since been disproven. The concept of nutrient sparing has been totally proven. The body will work for you, not against you. And you can go long periods of time eating specific foods. I have a cousin who had a problem as a child. He's a bit older than me, so I was not even aware of this until just recently when my mother told me that yes, in fact, your Uncle Arthur ate nothing but bananas until he was 6 years old because nothing else stayed down. I said, really? Come on, what did he eat? Nothing but bananas. They couldn't find another food, and until he was 6, he couldn't keep anything else down. For 6 years, he ate bananas. And I thought it was crazy until I talked to a buddy of mine from high school who had a daughter a few years back, and he's telling me about his daughter's diet, and he said, oh, it's a terrible thing. She's got a terrible physiological problem. What's the problem? He said, the only thing that she can eat, the doctors can't find anything to do about it, and it's the only thing she can eat is fruits and vegetables. So, gee, it sounds like my diet. It's not a punishment. This is the reward. If you don't have sufficient water to be well hydrated, you are dehydrated. When you're dehydrated, things don't work well. Everything stops functioning well. You become tired. Digestion becomes extremely sluggish. It's easy to become constipated. Nutrients cannot penetrate cell membranes any more than waste products of metabolism can get out of the cell membranes. The function of every cell, tissue, organ, and system becomes depressed. In order to achieve proper hydration, I make a point of not eating anything that makes me thirsty. I make a point, if it's extreme weather of some type or another, to weigh myself before and after activity. Because if I experience an extreme weight change, I know it wasn't fat that I lost, it was water. And I'll give you an example. Living in the Florida Keys, I have a fair idea of how much water I lose because the humidity is high enough so that none of it evaporates off of me. It drips off of me when I'm running. So basically the amount of water I lost is the amount that I can wring out of my socks and pour out of my shoes at the end of a run or something, at the end of a bicycle ride. You have a very good sense. You know you're losing water because it's dripping like crazy. I was in Los Angeles last summer and went for a run, and they were having their Santa Ana winds, and it was so hot. But it was also exceptionally dry, incredibly dry. I went for a run at 12 noon for an hour and a half and came back and mentioned to my host that it was the oddest thing. I never got hot the whole time I was running and never dripped one drop of perspiration. The temperature was 106. It was midday, and I was running on asphalt the whole time, in the full sun. I never dripped a drop of perspiration. And then it suddenly dawned on me. The reason I was cool was because all my perspiration was evaporating like crazy, the way it's supposed to do in places where the humidity allows it. And I got on the scale, and I was 8 pounds lighter than I'd been 90 minutes earlier. And realized, got to put in water first. It's an important need if you want to feel energetic, be well hydrated. When you lose water through perspiration, you also lose sodium. In order to maintain a proper sodium-potassium balance, we get plenty of potassium in our fruits and vegetables. But without eating a sufficient quantity of vegetables, especially the sodium-rich vegetables, it's easy to go low in sodium. If you're a very active person, sufficient celery especially, and other dark green leafy vegetables will help you reestablish the sodium content in your body. Razi mentioned that the less energy required or the less fuel required to digest your food, the more sensation of energy you have. So the simpler we make our meals, the more easily they digest. It's very common for me to make use of the mono meal, where I have one food for the entire meal. And this fits really well. It gives me a very clear feedback of, did I eat enough? Some of that feedback at first was learning that I hadn't eaten enough, because I was hungry again 2 hours later. And I learned, that wasn't enough. It's going to take more than that. A pint of strawberries satiates the sugar, but it didn't satiate the volume. It didn't satiate the number of calories. It didn't satiate enough of the other nutrients that come with the sugar. And there I was hungry again. When I sit down the next time, I ate more until I learned to eat enough that it would hold me from meal to meal, or even longer. The amount of energy that we put in to creating meals. The classic story of spent all day making Thanksgiving dinner and they ate it in 15 minutes. We can easily duplicate that with raw food. In fact, raw food is notorious for being high prep food. I watched Giuliano make meals that it took 4 people 4 hours to make dinner for 4 people, and we ate it in 15 minutes. I go, this is labor intensity. But as far as having energy yourself, a great way to make it easy on yourself is to also practice making some meals that require no prep at all. Yes, we can go low prep. People say recycling is a great idea. And I go, yeah, but how about pre-cycling? How about if we just get rid of all the packaging in the first place? That would be better than having to recycle the packaging. So we can say low prep is better than high prep as far as the use of our own energies. There are things that require high prep. When you're making holiday meals, when you're making special things, have fun. Make it an art form. You can also go all the way to no prep. And the word raw is a funny word because it gets bad publicity in people's psyche. Because most people think of the raw materials for building a house when they think of raw food. They go, the raw materials. are not the finished product. But raw foods are, in fact, the finished product. They're whole in and of themselves, ready to go, complete. I teach a concept called the 5-5-5 rule. The 5-5-5 rule is one worthy of mentioning here. If the meal costs more than $5, if it's got more than 5 ingredients, or it took more than 5 minutes to make it, start to question, is this go power food? It may well not be. If it mimics cooked food in its caloronutrient content, if it mimics cooked ingredients in terms of the numbers of things that are in the dish, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Now, if it looks like cooked food and it tastes like cooked food and it sits like cooked food, it might as well be cooked food as far as how our body is going to respond to it. The 5-5-5 rule is a great rule to work towards on as many meals as possible for you. And if this blows you away, then start with 7-7-7. And work your way down. Maybe you'll get to 7-7-6. And then 7-6-6 or 7-6-5. When 5-5-5 gets easy, go to 4-4-4 and 3-3-3 and 2-2-2. And eventually, you'll do like Bozzy and I do a lot of the time, 2-1-1-1. It requires no prep. Peel a banana. Peel 5. Peel 8. We get our bananas generally either out of the backyard. To me, the concept of paying for food is an alien one. Like paying for air or paying for water or paying for land. We don't truly own these things. These things are of the earth. We don't own the animals, and we don't own the property, and we don't own the air or the water or the food. It owns itself. But if we do have to pay for food, bananas or anything else that is ripe is really inexpensive in the grocery store. By the time it's ripe, they want to get rid of it. Very often I'll go into my local grocery store and they'll just say, you don't even have to pay for those. Case of bananas, come on, $1. And so we're down to the 1-1-1 rule, and I take $1 and I can eat as many bananas as I want, and it took no time to prep whatsoever, and it's really very easy. And the same could be said for avocados, and I know lots of grocers who will give you the avocados or give them to you 10 for $1. We think, oh, we can't buy avocados, they're so expensive. Not when they're ripe. Not when you're ready to eat them. When you learn proper storage techniques, you can do great things with them, even when you get a bunch of them at a reduced price. The other way to have a bit more go power to really appreciate what you're eating is to wait a little longer before you eat it or do a little more in between meals. Both activity and time improve your sense of taste. They improve your appetite. They improve your hunger. As your hunger heightens, things taste better. By being a bit active, we understand that most creatures exert themselves in order to eat. Whether it's a cat that has to run down its food, or it's an anthropoid primate that has to walk 1, 2, 5 miles, whether on ground or in the trees, to go get their food, most creatures have to go get their food. And we're equipped to do so. And we're well equipped to do so with legs and a method of moving around that makes it relatively effective. If we were automobiles running off of gasoline, human beings get close to 18,000 miles per gallon. We're very efficient creatures. On a bicycle, it's over 20,000 miles to gallon. Even locomotion of walking, we're extremely efficient in our fuel use. And we can walk a few miles. So the idea of being active before a meal, of earning your meal through some physical activity, or allowing a bit more time to go by and saying, okay, I don't have to eat every 2 hours or every 3. Let me stretch it to the point where I have a really good appetite. Make those meals just that much more acceptable.
We're talking about sharing health with others. And what that really means in practice is that we have been talking over a lot of theory. We're hoping to apply a little bit more of our attention to the practical application. Talking kitchens, talking recipes, menus, and creative ideas. Quotes. I begin with one by Henry C. Link, who said, while one person hesitates because he feels inferior, the other person is busy making mistakes and becoming superior. Neither Doug nor myself are putting ourselves forward as being superior. We're putting ourselves forward as people who've made plenty of mistakes. And that is what has enabled us to be able to stand up and share our experiences and allow you to feed on that and avoid making the same mistakes yourself. The second quote by Kim Hubbard, who said, lots of folks confuse bad management with destiny.
Yeah.
And like that, in many ways, it introduced me to the topic that I want to spend a few minutes talking about, and that is how you can better support yourselves in your pursuit of a more healthful lifestyle. The word independence tends to carry with it feelings of not needing to be governed in one's life by the dictates and expectations of others. Within that, independence means we become dependent upon the self more. As the majority of the society that you are living within is not pursuing the same healthful habits that you are, you may not feel that you have the support around you that you would like to have as you try and make new healthful changes in your diet. That's why coming together with other people of similar interest and pursuit is an inspiring and supporting thing to do. We hope that you leave feeling more confident that you're on the right track. In addition to that, having that feeling of a little bit of support from other people. Now, many people live in homes where they have their family around them who are supportive in many other aspects of their lives, but when it comes to their food choices, the rest of the family might not be supportive or understanding. This can put forward many challenges. There are other luckier individuals who live on their own, govern their own domain, their own kitchen, their own dining room, their own fridge and cupboards, and they don't have those sorts of challenges from other members of the family. Whichever is your situation, it is still possible to do certain things to better support yourself and offer yourself the support and encouragement that you need. One of those things includes the creation of a kitchen that supports the path that you're trying to pursue. There's some of you who live in families who are still desiring or choosing to eat unhealthful foods, cooked foods, non-vegan foods, whatever it might be, and that you're sort of trying to hold your own amongst those potential influences. I'm sure there's others here who have that situation whereby they're living on their own. Either way, there are changes that you can make. A few ideas that I've discovered are really good to implement in order for your kitchen to be more supportive. First, if you are pursuing a raw diet, one thing you're going to need plenty of space for is chopping up and cutting. You're going to need work surface. It can be so frustrating, some of you perhaps have experienced this, when you're in a kitchen where there's so little work surface that you're putting your sleeve in everything and the recipe book in everything and the tea towels across what you're working on and everything's falling on top of everything else. And it literally psychologically can give you a bit of a feeling that the whole thing is closing in on you. What I encourage you to do is maximize as much work surface and clear as much work surface as you can. Some people that means clearing up and tidying up the kitchen. Many of us find that, we had quite a lot of work surface there, but we didn't realize it because it was all covered up with stuff. So maximize the work surface for yourselves. It's immensely helpful. And if you have the opportunity to do so, according to the other people you may live with, the top of your cooker, if you're choosing to pursue a raw diet, becomes another work surface. Don't let that go to waste. You can simply go and get a piece of formica or similar substance cut to shape just to put over the top of your cooker. I've seen people who have turned the top of their cooker into one giant chopping board. That works really well. We have actually with us one of our little flexible chopping boards. This is something that we've recently discovered and we're now carrying to show to people because we find them excellent. They are very hard wearing, these little chopping boards. The great thing about them is that when you've chopped something up, instead of trying to scoop it into the bowl, you pick it, roll it into a funnel and tip it in. And it all keeps everything so neat and efficient and non-messy. Washing up, it's so much lighter to just wash this under the tap, it's flexible, than lug a great big wooden chopping board across. Well, I have noticed they're particularly good, presumably because of what they're made of, I don't know, but they don't blunt knives as much as many other cutting surfaces do. Which brings me to my next point, and that is of having sharp knives in your kitchen. If your kitchen has blunt knives, it can be an exercise in frustration every time you go to prepare anything. To actually invest in a whole set of really good quality knives, I think is a very worthwhile investment and one you'll be glad you made, along with a knife sharpener, and keep your knives sharp so that you're not having that frustration. Things that you're using need to be out on the side. A client of mine who I say that eccentric in its most polite meaning is the way to describe her. Her husband's way is everything in their kitchen in terms of blender, juicer, and even their knives have to be put inside bags and then put away in cupboards that are so high up you need a step ladder to reach them. The opportunity to say to yourself, I think I'm just going to pop into the kitchen and make myself some orange juice, becomes a whole major undertaking. Instead of just being in the kitchen, cut your orange juice in, you're done, you've got to go to the cupboard, get it down, get it out of its bag, set it up, plug it in. It becomes a challenge that is more trouble than it's worth. It's much quicker to go in there and quickly put the coffee pot on. So have the equipment you're going to use regularly out in the kitchen. Keep it plugged in if it's electrical. Have it available. Don't leave yourself scratching around trying to set something up every time you want to go make something. When you're working with raw foods, you're working with a lot of water. Because raw foods are very juicy. And because they're juicy, you're going to find that your hands are continually needing to be wiped on something. Very often you need to wipe the counter because the juice is running all over the place. And there's nothing more frustrating than to find that juice is running all down the front of the counter, into the drawers, into the cupboard in front of where you're standing. What can be very useful? To get a tea towel and literally just twist it and place it along the edge in front of you where you're working. And that will stop juices from ending up inside your drawers. So that's one idea. Also keeping many cloths and towels available. Don't skimp with yourselves on the number of cloths you have available. Have a real good pile ready at hand. You've got a nice clean one for your hands or what you're working with. The cooker itself, what you do with that depends on if you still have people in where you live who are cooking food. Assuming you don't waste the space. You can use that space. You can store things in it. I put my raw food recipe guides inside the oven. My accountant then accused me of cooking the books. There is an enormous area of storage there that you can utilise. Another thing is to bear in mind that you very often buy produce that isn't ripe, and you need to allow space in your kitchen to lay stuff out so that it may ripen and make space for that. I have a very small house in England and have developed a technique with ripening bananas. I put them at the side of the staircase. Because hot air rises, the ones at the top tend to ripen before the ones at the bottom of the stair. The most wonderful thing is that it's a real conversation piece as soon as people walk in the front door. And they see this whole line of bananas up the side of the staircase. And the questions start. I say, as I've got so many bananas today, how about a banana smoothie? Have you ever had one? And my blender's already set up in the kitchen, and I can quickly make them a smoothie. And we're already on the road to sharing the joys of living foods with other people. So be as supportive to yourselves as you can in your kitchens. Go home, and if you have made a commitment to yourself to pursue a raw vegan diet, and it's appropriate in accordance with the other people with whom you might live, I suggest that you do not leave things in your kitchen cupboards just in case somebody visits who needs it. Because you know what that means? It means I might need it. It's like I'm not really fully ready to let go. It can be so liberating to get a big plastic bin liner and put all of that unhealthful food in it and fling it out. Just grab out your cupboard, go down to your produce store and fill your kitchen with all the things you need to support your new choices. Be bold. Get the black plastic bin liner and go for it, and you'll be really glad that you did. Because otherwise, every time you open the cupboard, the temptation is there. And we are all human. Temptations impact upon us. So I'm going to leave it there, bearing in mind your family situation. You will do what you can to support yourself according to your situation. But one thing is for sure, your family are far more liable to become interested in what you are attempting to teach them if they can see how easy and quick and efficient the kitchen has become, as well as how good the food tastes. Thank you.
I want to have some fun with you tonight. I want to take you a few places that maybe you've gone with me before and maybe you've never gone before at all, and have some fun, because tonight we're talking about, more than ever, influencing other people and how to do that. I'm sure that everyone has frustrated themselves at least a little bit trying to be a force for good in someone else's life. We've talked ourselves out of influencing people. We've shown people what a poor grasp we have of the situation. We've oftentimes embarrassed, been rude to people, lost friends, didn't do the best that I could have with my family. Couldn't lose family. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. So I want to spend some time talking about techniques. They don't all work for everybody every time. But these are techniques that I've tried that work better than the other things that I used to do. And as I say, we learn by our mistakes. We learn by failing. And the funny thing is that most of the stuff that I've ended up applying into my raw food lifestyle are the things that I applied in the rest of my life too. Somehow I went raw and lost my brain for a while and forgot how to communicate with people. It's the same people skills over again, but different phraseology, because we now want to apply it in a new way. My father used to intervene between arguments that my sister and I would have. Even though I knew that I had her as far as logic went, she had me as far as
something went if it was just a matter of being stubborn. And his intervention was the same. Are you right? He would ask me. I go, yeah, I'm right. He goes, well, then why are you arguing? He would say, no one wins an argument. By the time a conversation has devolved into argument phase, you've lost. If you have a hope to win someone over to your way of thinking things, and it had now gone to the level of argument, there's no way to win. So I really attempt to avoid argument, because argument doesn't serve me, it doesn't serve them. What's the point? You know more about nutrition, more about food, more about health, more about a lot of related areas than just about everybody you know or will ever meet. More than 99% of America. Maybe 99.99. But your next door neighbor really thinks they know everything there is to know about nutrition. They've been eating their whole life, just like you. My next door neighbor was a gourmet chef. He wrote a book. When his book finally came out, I said, congratulations on your book. I have a recipe book as well. Maybe we can share some recipes. It was one of the first times I've been able to have a nice conversation with him in a long time. And he said, yeah, that would be really nice, but you're a vegetarian. I don't have any vegetarian recipes in my book. And I was stunned to think vegetables and fruits and legumes and seeds and nuts and tubers make up a big portion of the total food options. I said, you don't have one recipe in your whole book that would suit a vegetarian? I didn't bother to tell him we'd gone past vegetarian 30 years ago, and it was now vegan, and it was now raw, but I said, believe that you don't have a vegetarian recipe in your book. It's such a huge portion of the total food supply. And he thought for a minute and came back to me, and he said, you know, I do have a recipe that you might find that you really like. It's a chicken something or another. I looked at him and said, chicken? How do you figure? And he goes, well, chicken's a vegetable. They just eat grains. And he was dead serious. Still, if you set yourself up as an authority, when you go to talk to your next door neighbor, your aunt, your cousin, your mother, your friends and loved ones, when you set yourself up as an authority, those people tend to balk at your authority. But they won't balk when someone else is an authority that you are quoting. According to Dr. Da-da-da from Da-da-da, vegetables have on average twice the protein of meat. They might go, oh no, that couldn't be, or where did you get it? But you already told them where you got it, and you go, well, I don't really know. I don't study these sciences like that, but according to the research I've read in da-da-da-da, I found out something or another. When you set someone else up as an authority, you have a much better chance of communicating your message. And really, it's going to come down to communicating your message. That's what we're trying to do, because we want, as we said, the organic produce to be less expensive. And the way to have that happen is for more of it to sell. So you want your next door neighbor to buy it so the price goes down for you. We want the produce in the market to be fresher. And the way to have that happen is to have a more rapid turnover. So you want your neighbors to buy it so that it comes out better for you. Oh yeah, and for them. And we want to have more variety of organic produce and more variety of produce in general. Demand creates supply, so we want your neighbors to be buying it too. It's all about the message. There's that part of us that wants to see people feeling better, enjoying life. No one likes to watch someone else suffer. The altruism of wanting to do something for others is really strong in all of us. And it used to irritate the heck out of me when I would stumble over my own poor people skills in order to blow my altruistic desires and talk somebody right out of trying something that I thought might be good. I don't know it all, but I have eaten cooked food for a long time, and I've eaten raw food for almost as long. And I can give a fairly accurate analysis of what happened with each. The raw food results were better than the cooked food results. The person who is only theorizing about raw food, in their head, thinking philosophy, oh, well, maybe, gee, what would it be like if I only ate raw? They have no idea. No idea. All they know is, what would it be like if I only ate raw food? It would be like I don't get to eat any of the things I love. That's the only stuff I know is cooked food. I don't know any raw food. But people want to know. They're curious to know. People will go to a wide variety of ethnic restaurants to find out what's there. People are inquisitive about food. They want to know, and we're going to take advantage of that. There are certain things you can say that will set someone on edge, send them away, conversation's over, you lost them. But there's things you can say that won't. You can ask questions rather than give statements. Somebody asks me, where do you get your protein? I usually ask them, where do you get your protein? And let them tell me. And I don't then refute what they said. I say, oh, that's really interesting. Now let's get on with the conversation we were talking about. It's easier to ask a question than to force feed them with information. As the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them think. They got to think for themselves. You can plant seeds. I used to go to restaurants. Restaurants were hell for me. If I really wanted to be in hell for a while, it was a restaurant. And that was because I wasn't confident explaining to the food server what it was I wanted. It was more about what I didn't want, I thought. No, I don't want the onions. Please don't put the breadcrumbs on top. Could you leave out the garlic? No, I don't. No, there was so many things that I didn't want. Would it be possible to get green lettuce rather than white lettuce? No matter what I told them, when the salad came out, it had things in it that were unacceptable. Either I didn't know that it was on the salad and it was still there, or the waitress forgot to take it off, or the chef forgot to take it off, or something. It reminds me of the TV commercial with the guy that orders dry toast, and when it comes it has butter on it, and so the waitress scrapes it off the side of the table. When you order a baked potato dry, and it comes out with butter 100 times at 100 restaurants, and the waitress says, oh, the chef forgot. Well, the waitress forgot to tell the chef, but she's thinking enough to remember to tell you that it was the chef's fault, because you're never going to see the chef. It's a funny thing, because it would be so easy to get the waitress on your side, and it's so easy to get the waitress wanting you out of her area. You walk in and you, look, I'm not allowed to eat this, I don't like this, I don't want this. Is your food organic? When was it picked? How old is the lettuce? Do you have romaine? How about sprouts? Do you grow your own sprouts here at this restaurant, or do you buy them? Do you know when they're, what was the date on the... This waitress doesn't want to deal with you. She's there for the tip. Give her a tip at the beginning. You think if you gave the waitress a few dollars at the beginning and said, I want my baked potato dry, that it's going to come out with butter on it? If you give her a tip at the beginning and say, oh, and if the service is excellent, there'll be a tip at the end, too. And you say, oh, I'd really like to have some fresh sprouts. She'll go grow you sprouts. She'll go to the grocery store and buy you sprouts. She'll make sure you have what you want if you're taking care of her. Otherwise, she'd really rather get you out of her section and let's move on. If you walk in and say, well, I don't like this, and I'm a health fanatic, and is your lettuce organic, and I really, do you use the same cutting boards for the meat that you use for the lettuce? And you can really drive them nutty. They're not ready for you. And if you walk in and speak the waitress's language, very simply, my doctor says I have to start with a green salad. Could you just bring me a bowl of greens? Nothing else, please? While I'm having that, I'd like a menu, too. My doctor says. You don't have to go into all details. I've said my doctor says to literally hundreds of people. No one has ever asked me, who's your doctor? What condition do you have? Sometimes in restaurants I've hinted, I've played. I have a little tummy condition. My doctor says if I just start with greens before the meal, bring me out a bowl of greens. If you don't have that, just cut a head of lettuce in half and bring it out. And with a menu. Sometimes I play with a little stomach condition. It's not really a big deal. Projectile vomiting and that sort of thing. I mean, but it can be, just bring me some lettuce, please. Just lettuce. Oh, they're very quick. She's got a tip. My doctor says you've spoken her language. She's not going to argue with your doctor. What's she going to do? Call your doctor? Hey, is this guy for real? Does he really need lettuce before I bring him a menu? Of course. In fact, a lot of people find that they can bring dressings into a restaurant, and you can walk into a restaurant and the restaurant says, no food, you can't bring your food in. Most restaurants won't be that rough, but there are restaurants that don't like you to do that. You go, oh, this isn't food, this is medicine. You can bring medicine in, and you're done. Speak their language, everything works just fine. I've talked to more raw fooders who have told me that what they said had very little influence on other people. They knew what influenced other people was how they looked. People aren't healthy as a rule. People are sicker than we give them credit for. Complicated health problems, multiple health problems. People are looking. They know, even if it's on a subconscious level, they know that what they're doing isn't working. They're looking for answers. They'd like to be able to have more energy. They want to control their weight. They'd like to really not have diabetes. They know that they're on the road to heart disease and cancer because everybody is. They know things aren't going the way that they're supposed to go because one of the words that comes out of their mouth a lot is, I used to be able to this, that, and the other, and now I can't anymore. And they know when they see you vibrant, alive, awake, never missing work, happy, volunteering, going to the gym, coming in with a bounce in your step, never missing work again, eating fruits and vegetables, you don't have to say a word. It's already done the part. Wow, you're just not getting older. What's going on? You look better than you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Oh, we've been working in this job a long time. What have you done? Something's turned around. Go away on vacation. Come back looking better than when you left. And you go, what? What happened? You're supposed to destroy yourself on vacation. If you give somebody a book and say, here, read this, so there, chances of it getting read approaching zero. I give people a little pamphlet, brain damage or hygienic fasting or something that is so short that they almost can't help but read it. It only takes minutes to read it. And I give it to them and I go, I read this thing. I don't know if the guy is a genius or an idiot, but I know you know a lot about health. Would you read it and tell me your opinions, please? People want to do you a favor? Of course they do. People want to do you a favor when you respect their intelligence? Of course they do. You might not be able to do that again and again and again to the same person, but certainly if you really want somebody to review something, you can get them to do it by asking them nicely, respecting their intelligence, and saying, look, I want to get your opinion on this. It's just a short read. They'll read it, they'll review it. They'd be more than happy to tell you what they think. I'm learning things about driving that I never knew or that I forgot. Having lived in Florida Keys for so long where there is only one lane of traffic in each direction and only one road. We just go out. If it's tourist season, we wait until there's no cars, then you get in line. If it's not tourist season, you just go out and go. And I'm learning things about driving when I come to city areas that I really had forgotten. I forgot completely that the person directly behind me has right of way over me. I forgot that. I don't know where I was when I forgot that important lesson, but apparently the people behind you have right of way over you. It's the same in L.A., by the way. They honk, go around you, and cut you off. And you go, oh, I'm sorry. The temptation to machine gun them is very strong. When somebody pays you a compliment, you start looking around for a compliment to pay back. Somebody gives you a big smile. It's hard not to smile back. Somebody makes an ugly comment, boy, you just want to bite their head off. We are so reactive when really that's not what we want to be. We want to be proactive. We want to create the situation. If we can create the situation, oh, that'd be so nice. To be able to listen, take a breath, step back. If somebody says, what'd you do to your hair? Why do you eat like that? Oh, you like it? It's the new way I'm doing my hair. Thanks. I really like the way you're doing your hair, too. Well, tell me, why do you eat like that? Does the doctor have you on a special program? People call you a health nut. It's not a compliment. They're playing with you a little bit, but it's not a compliment. If you respond in kind and call them a sickness nut, they would understand very quickly that it wasn't a compliment. They wouldn't like what you said back. How do you like your rabbit food? Oh, I like my rabbit food just fine. How do you like your vulture food? They wouldn't. Does the doctor really insist that all the food you eat be brown? You're on a special program. Brown is the color. It's a funny thing. People come up to me at weddings and parties and all sorts of places and start asking me nutritional questions and health questions, and it's not the time to answer. The temptation to answer is strong. Oh, I got me one. The temptation is strong, but it's not the time to answer in the first place. And really, what most people want isn't an answer. They want to know that what they're doing is just as okay as what you're doing. The development of the self-love required to answer in a loving way. I won't tell you that I've developed that to a perfection by any stretch. It has grown in me. I find it just as easy when somebody asks me a health question to change the subject. They ask me a question, what do you eat? I go, tell me about what you eat. What's this whole thing about the carbohydrates anyway? What do you think the Mets are going to do this year? I'm under no obligation to discuss my lifestyle. There's a famous old saying, never discuss politics, religion, or food. Wasn't that it? People get really threatened. And I don't want to threaten people. I'm not trying to turn people away before I even get a chance to give them my message. I want to give them a message that will mean something to them. I want to plant a seed in a way that they'll go, oh yeah, that's worthy of thinking. Where do you get your protein? Well, I don't really know. My doctor takes care of that. And he's not worried about my protein levels. Where do you get yours? And just let it go and let them tell you. Oh, okay. But they're obviously thinking. They're obviously wondering. And you didn't give them anything. I know I said the other night, you can lead a horse to water. You can't hold their head under till they get thirsty. You can't force people into an understanding of what you're giving them. I used to think I could tell everyone in the world about the raw food message. They'd all want to know because of the phenomenal results, and they don't all want to know. And I realized that I can tell all the people who want to know. And that's more satisfying for me and more satisfying for them. I don't need to bang my head against the wall in a way that doesn't give me satisfaction. Somebody says, well, is it possible for you to be an athlete on a raw food diet? I'm going to tell them that's a really good question. But I think a more important question is, and then I'll tell them whatever it is I want them to know in the form of a question. It might be as simple as, can you be a successful athlete? Can you be your best as an athlete on a cooked food diet? They don't know the answer because I haven't tried both sides of the coin yet. They know the cooked food side, but it's going to make them think, gee, I wonder, maybe, but maybe not. I don't know. There are many, many ways to phrase. So, where do I get my calcium? That's a really good question. The more important question here is, where do you lose calcium? What factors influence the loss of calcium? There are so many ways to phrase it so that it's not an in-your-face, so there, I gotcha, because you're ruining a friendship. You're ruining a potential chance to learn from them and for them to learn from you. Because we learn just as much from other people as hopefully we can teach other people. Do you really get all the protein you need on that diet? I don't know. I haven't done the math. But I know that I'm feeling really good. I know my doctor isn't worried. He's giving me good reports. I know I'm sleeping less and having sex more and feeling better. And, gee, all the signs are good. What the heck is protein for anyway? They don't know. They're just asking you because that's the only nutrient question they know how to ask. They don't know what the protein's for. I used to struggle having people come over to the house just as much as I'd struggle going to a restaurant. I found out, by the way, restaurants are really easy. I tell the waitress what I want. I don't worry about what I don't want. I just tell her what I want. Found a way to communicate with her. If it takes medical leave, if it takes a couple of bucks before the meal starts, just tell her what I want. Say, you know what? I'm going to be the easiest person to serve that you've ever had. Just bring me this, please. I'll be happy. End of story. Same when I go out with friends. I had family come over. A big chunk of family. Some of them I didn't even know. I didn't know what I could get away with in my house. I served figgy pudding, something I used to really love, still like a lot. You take figs, start with fresh figs and blend them. Start with dried figs, add water and blend them. Serve. If you want to get fancy, you take romaine leaves, use those as spoons, eat your spoon as you go. Serve figgy pudding. My Aunt Selma loved it. Wow, this is so good. She goes, how did you make this? I said, I took figs and put them in the blender. She goes, let me see if I've got that. She goes, you cooked the figs, and then what did you do exactly? I said, no, I didn't cook the figs. I just put the figs in the blender with enough water so that it wasn't too sweet to be edible, and then that was it. She goes, oh, I see. You cooked the figs, and then you blended them. I go, no, I didn't cook the figs. We tried 4 times. Couldn't get past the idea of cook the figs. Okay, that's how it was. But she really liked the figgy pudding. That she knew. Said, I'll make it for you anytime you want it. The rest of the family comes over. People I don't know. Some of them are in their 80s, 60s, 40s, and 20s. A whole bunch of people come at once. Of course, they come on the worst day of the year at my house because it's cold out. Doesn't make the Florida Keys look really hospitable when it's cold out. We're having the once-a-year absolute horrible blue norther winter storm of the year for sure. I mean, it's 54, 55 degrees. It's terrible. And you laugh. But when it's 54 degrees outside, it's 54 degrees inside. We have no heat. You laugh. It gets much colder in my house in the winter than it does in yours. So it's cold in my house. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And what am I going to make? I have no idea what to make. And so I said, you know what? Let me just put out a salad bar. I'm just going to take all the vegetables, put it out as a salad bar. Some nuts, some seeds, some vegetables. Help yourself. Take what you want. It was the absolute hit. Another time I had family come. They come over. I go, I don't know what to make. I don't even know these people. Again, my mother's bringing family. Lovely. Okay. I made a cornucopia, pile, heap of fruit. Things they'd never seen before. I put out papaya like they've never seen papaya. Put out ilama. They don't know what ilama is. Raspberry vanilla pudding inside of a skin? I'll try that. Sure. Put out mango for them. They could go for mango. They said, yeah, I've heard of mango. Exactly how do you eat it? I showed them how to eat it. How to cut it. Well, you could cut it this way and then slice it and then turn it inside out and it's really pretty. You can cut it in sections and peel the skin back. You can put it on a fork and peel it and eat it right off the fork. A bunch of different ways. We put out Nice-Berra for them and they go, oh, wow, Nice-Berra, what the heck is that? Oh, it tastes like cinnamon-baked pear. You eat it and you go, wow, this tastes like baked pear with cinnamon. How could that be inside of a fruit? It's just amazing. And they were willing to taste everything. And a couple of celery stalks and a couple of lettuce leaves, a few nuts and seeds. I wasn't going to worry about what they eat. Was the combination perfect for them? They never eat perfect combinations. I was going to educate, but they were certainly interested in learning a little bit about the food. They were more than happy if I would open up a coconut and put a straw in and go, here, would you like a coconut? Done. They thought that was just lovely. So easy. When I made it hard, it was really hard. And when I just said, John, just put the food out, and we finished the meal, and the one guy who I was the most worried about, the diabetic at the table, who I said, make sure you eat some celery in between these bites of sweet fruits. He checked his blood sugar. It was lower than before the meal. Had no problem there. And he said, this is the best meal I've had on my entire trip. This was sweet and juicy. This was really nice. This is what my wife never lets me eat, is sweet stuff. How come it didn't make my sugar go up? And now, it's like going fishing. Now I got it. I've got the chance to spread a message, which is all I wanted, was an opportunity. And I put out the nuts and seeds because I didn't want to give them things that they'd never seen before only, but also because, as we've mentioned in the past, the standard American diet has 3 features in common. Low fiber, high fat, low water. Nuts and seeds are all dehydrated before you buy them, or they would go moldy. If you buy nuts in the shell, some of them are roasted, but you can buy raw nuts in shell. Even those have been dehydrated so that they don't go moldy. The only nuts in shell that are truly fresh nuts in the shell are fresh nuts in the shell, like in October, November when they're falling off the trees. You can buy raw macadamia nuts in shell. Without our nutcracker, they're tough to open for sure, but with a nutcracker, it's easy. Even those had to be dried a little bit, or they'll go moldy. Fresh is a whole other world. By putting out nuts and seeds, I gave them a food that they could relate to, something that was concentrated, low water, high fat, not enough fiber volume to stop them from eating enough of it so that they could go, oh yeah, I can get full on this meal. Because if I just put out lettuce, they can't make a meal. If I just put out fruit, even that, they can fill up for 15, 20 minutes, but an hour later, well, they're still in my house and they're ready for the next meal. I'm not ready for that. I want them to feel satisfied because then they're going to ask me questions. Wow, that was a really good meal. That sat really well. That satiated me. That was as sweet as I would like things to be in my life. That didn't leave me tired. Didn't give me digestive disturbance. It came through like a pleasure. Showing a genuine interest, answering people's questions after they ask them, give them a chance, really does make a difference. People want to know. They're willing to try. They're open. I've gone to lots of mainstream groups and spoken for groups that had never heard of lots of the tropical fruits that I know you are well familiar with. I've gone into groups. Rosie and I were in a church in Cocoa Beach, and there wasn't a raw fooder in the room. And we spoke in the chapel. It was a really nice church with carpet, and everything was perfect. And I brought in one of the durian and opened it up and told them a little bit about it and said, who would be willing to try this? And almost everybody raised their hand that they'd be willing to try it. Well, I wasn't ready for that. I hadn't prepared for that in any way. So I took some on my finger, scooped it out, walked around, dropped it in their mouth, went to the next person, dropped it in. I felt a little like the priest. And nobody said, oh, well, that's not hygienic, what you're doing. Your fingers were just really close to her mouth, and now you're going around to 75 people and dropping your food in their mouth. Felt a little bit like Mama Bird, too, feeding all those baby birds. But everybody said they liked it. and they'd never had it before. We just prepped them for it a little bit, told them a bit about the fruit, have a taste. Yeah, it tastes good for sure. Doesn't taste like anything I've ever had before, but it tastes really good. It's amazing. People will open up to you if that's what you're perceiving. If you're ready to let them accept you, they will. And if you want to make a fight out of it, you can get one. What I'd like to do is take a minute and ask you, if you have pen and paper, to take one whole minute and think about your idea. What have you done that worked when people came to your house, or when you were out, or you found yourself in a social situation, or you went to a party, or whatever it was? What was the one thing you did that really worked, that you can get it down to reasonably short few words? Tell me what it was. You got it? What'd you do that worked?
Go in the restaurants, in most restaurants, you get the salads and find one that...
So you try to find something in a restaurant that is acceptable and order what they've got, and just bend and flex a little bit.
Yeah.
I usually order whatever vegetable thing they have, the broccoli.
So you mix and match at the restaurant and ask them to take from different things, put it all into one. I've walked into lots of restaurants and said, I'll just have your vegetable platter, please. Oh, you don't need to bother to cook it. They go, we don't serve a vegetable platter. Oh, you must have vegetables. Oh, yeah, we have da, 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 da.
Go to friends' houses, I usually just take a meal that I know I'll be able to eat.
Bring your own food. The Arabs have a saying, trust in Allah, but tie up your camel. Bring your own food. Rosie and I go on airplanes. We don't expect them to have whole, fresh, ripe, raw, organic plant food for us. No, they have fluorescent green banana. I might not live long enough for that banana to ripen up. We bring our own food. It's a beautiful thing.
We've had people come up and ask us why we went to a wedding not long ago and we ate all the fruit that was on the display that was around.
You do what I do. We eat the garnish. Yes, we eat the garnish. I went to a wedding. The only thing there was the only thing edible at the entire wedding was the garnish. I had lettuce. I had orange sliced so thin that there wasn't 1 calorie per slice, and watermelon the same way. And ate the garnish. Made a good meal.
So they asked us why we ate like that. We just said we like it, and nobody bothered us.
So many people said, why do you eat that way? And I go, I like it. It's a brilliant answer. If you want to, you can even go, why do you eat that way?
And I'll start with something I know they'll like raw.
So you're really receptive to what the other people need. You make sure they like it before you serve a whole dish of it. That's a great idea. One of the things that I do also along that line is be very careful about the restaurants I choose when I'm going to go out with a group. Because I can go to Ryan's, for instance, and eat. But I can't go to McDonald's and eat. I can go to a place that has a salad bar and make a good meal. Whereas if I'm just going to the surf and turf place, I'm in trouble.
I always take several dishes automatically. Oh, that's okay.
So Jackie's motto is, have food, will travel.
Find a lot of the same, bring my own food, or if people are at my house, just offer them a taste.
Yes, it's very smart to let people taste food before you decide that this is what they're eating for the whole night, if it's something they've never tried before.
When I'm traveling on road, I have my snacks ready to go.
People ask me, how do we eat on the road? Where do you go? And you do the same thing we do. You go to the grocery store. Grocery stores have great food. It's an amazing thing. Grocery stores all over the country.
Some people would say I'm vested in conflict, so I want some people's interest and attention.
So you make raw versions of things they might recognize. I have won awards with my raw chili. It has won awards.
We open a restaurant.
Take care of the whole problem. Feed the world, open a restaurant, takes care of everything.
A lot of times in restaurants, chefs make the same menu. They love it too.
I've done the exact same thing. Tell the chef to be creative. And every time I've ever done it, tell the chef, I don't care what it costs, I want a really good meal. And every time I've ever done it, the chef has come out and thanked me. I really get tired. We've got 9 dishes on this menu, and I make this menu every night, and I'm really tired. It was so much fun. And they make, in one restaurant near my home, they made me a dish that when they served it, 4 other people in the restaurant ordered it. They said, I want what he's got. Right down on the spot. It blew their minds. They eventually created a dish that would allow me to have whatever I want when I go there, and realizing that a lot of people want it, they just weren't offering it. I appreciate that.
Doug has been spending time with you discussing how best to deal with situations in less familiar surroundings than your own home, such as restaurants or other people's homes. What I discuss is a little closer to home. Your own dining table, your own kitchen, and the people with whom you share your living space. What I would like to know from you, because it's important to me that I make this tailored to your need, could I ask for as to how many of you live with children or teenagers in your living space? And how many of you live with other people other than just yourself who are not following the same dietary path? And the rest of you have got it made. You can call all the shots because you're living in your own home, either on your own or with people who are supportive of what you're doing. I am a great believer, for want of a better term, that ritual in one's life is a very rich thing. As the centuries have gone by and the pace of life has speeded up, we have lost the essence of ritual in our lives, and we've lost a tremendous amount of richness with the loss of those rituals. The time that really gives rise so beautifully to ritual is a time whereby we're sharing food with our loved ones, or we're handling or preparing foods or making foods. Doug and I are very honoured and privileged to work from time to time with a lady by the name of Sherry Sawyer. Some of you might know Sherry from the Living Light Culinary Arts Institute, who runs the Raw Chef training courses. And the number one law in Sherry's kitchen is that if you do not feel that you are making the food with love, you must leave the kitchen. Because Sherry believes that you can taste the love in the food. Many of you are connecting to what I'm saying, and you can appreciate that. And yet, in reality, what so often tends to happen. So I'm going to describe a little scenario to you and see if it matches anything that you might experience in your life. And that scenario is that the person who's preparing the food is in the kitchen and they're slightly against the clock. They're aware they have to do something rapidly. The second thing is that they're also aware this is a potential time of volatility or conflict, because the children or others in the house who are going to be stamping their tiny feet or their larger feet in objection to what you're presenting them to eat, or they're going to want to eat things that's going to upset you in some way. And that person is in the kitchen and they're frenetically preparing the food, and the nervous habit of picking at the food starts to happen as a nervous response to the stress that they feel building as time takes them towards the sharing of food with their loved ones. Through all the picking of food, by the time it gets to the table, they don't really want any food because they've already had it in the kitchen. And the reason they've had it in the kitchen is because it was a stress action. Then we come to the table, and what happens at the table is the topic that is talked about is food and diet. And it's brought up because people are objecting to what they're having put in front of them. The person who's tried to do their best to provide food that they believe is going to be nourishing for the health of their loved ones starts to feel frustrated, hurt, upset and distressed. And those who feel that their needs aren't being provided because the foods they prefer are not on the table start to feel angry and resentful and equally as frustrated. The food is therefore eaten while everyone's in a state of stress. It's eaten often without awareness. What I mean by that is, have you ever eaten food whilst doing something else, working at the computer, and then it's gone? You didn't even realize. We talked a lot about the challenges people come across when they overeat. One of the reasons that people overeat is because they weren't present when they were eating. They weren't there. The food was going in, that's about all you can say. There was no connection with it. The scenario I've described might not match yours entirely or even remotely. You may have a completely different scenario. Chances are that you could bring, if you chose to, a greater degree of what I call graceful reverence to your eating and your handling and preparing of food. The intention that a person has may not be visible in the material world, but an intention is an energy that can be felt by those around you. And if one's intention is to create a ritual whereby graceful reverence is the primary message and nurturing is an intention, that will be picked up upon. How do we go about this practically? Let's just consider those children for a moment. Children, as far as their diets are concerned, are often very much under the control of their parents, partially for financial reasons. They cannot just have the money on their own to walk into the shop and buy what it is they want. They say, Mom or Dad, can I go and get a so-and-so? Or can you give me the money for a such and such? So they're feeling a little controlled from the word go. Secondly, they are rarely involved in the preparing of the meal. It's plonked down in front of them, and that is what they're supposed to eat. How about inviting children to start becoming involved in the preparation of the food? For some of you, you might have this nightmare of seeing food all over the kitchen and mess everywhere. But in reality, children, in my experience, work a lot with people who do have children. What tends to happen is this. If a child has been involved in preparing and creating something, it wants not only itself to eat it, but everyone at the table to eat it. It's important. It's something they've created. And as such, they're very proud of what they've done. Another thing, too, is that if children learn more about the foods that they're eating, that can be a great educational experience for the parents as well as the children. For example, one food per week, like a family project, to find out as much about it as you could. Something like the simple banana. How much could your children have fun researching and finding out with you about bananas? And the important thing is that if they are invited to share what they've learnt at the table, they will start to feel an affinity with a banana. They will start to feel that they like bananas. Bananas are important. We should eat bananas, because they feel they own a little bit of them, because they've found out about them and they've shared that information with other people. I know people who've tried this and found it's worked. They've had fun sitting down with encyclopedias with the kids and looking up oranges and discovering how many different varieties there are. Even more than that, the children begin to feel that they have some control over what they're eating because they're involved in creating it. And as such, they're liable to be happy to sit down and enjoy it with you. A feeling of being controlled is something children generally don't particularly like, and there is a certain age that they reach, they definitely don't like it. And those of you who are mums of teenagers have probably already discovered that. Even if you don't have children, there are ways of inviting your other loved ones or the people with whom you live to be involved in the preparing of healthier foods. If your aim is that your family or loved ones will be enjoying some fruit before dinner and the main bulk of the dinner is a giant-sized vegetable salad, how about inviting them to experiment and try one type of fruit as a little starter before their meal? It can be half a dozen grapes on a plate. You don't need to introduce them to the vast quantities that perhaps you're eating or would like them eventually to be consuming. But just a habit of a little bit of fruit. There's very few children or adults who, if presented with 6 grapes, would say they don't want them. They would just sit there and pick them off the stalk and then start moving on to the meal. How about if the next thing was that you always provided that beautiful giant salad, but they could have the regular stuff that they choose to have in whatever perverted, cooked or carnivorous form it was, but that salad was always available. One thing about food, the more attractive it looks, the more people are drawn towards it. And Doug mentioned earlier the colour brown. If on their plate they have got a piece of mutated animal in all its brownness and blood-colouredness, and in the middle of the table there is this glorious display of these wonderful fruits and vegetables, where do you think their eye is going to be drawn? The habit is drawing them towards what's on their plate, but the eye will be drawn to the colour. When it comes to creating a ritual out of a meal, one thing we can do perhaps is to bring back the habit of saying grace before a meal. I'm not referring to any religion. I'm simply saying that offering thanks and appreciation for what's on the table in front of you. And there is a saying that I made up, which I enjoy sharing with people. It's very short. It simply goes like this. Before we take of this sweet fare, we stop to thank you for our share. With reverence and grace we'll eat, in honour of this earthly treat. And it's short, and it takes that moment for people to stop the madness of their everyday life and tune into their meal. You can invite the children to make up their own little phrases, and they could say it before the meal. Get them involved. And apart from grace, what about the table setting? How often in the madness of our everyday lives is the food effectively flung on the table and the papers and pencils and books sort of pushed to the side and the cat taken off the chair and you somehow perch on one cheek as you're sort of cramped into your little space? How about we brought a little reverence to the table by taking the time and the care to make it look pretty? And it really doesn't take much. You know, I appreciate that we lead very busy lives. It may be that some of you are sitting there thinking, well, she obviously has nothing better to do all day than go and pick flowers and light candles. But it really doesn't take that long to clear a table, to put on a cloth, to make some place settings, and put something attractive in the middle. When I say something attractive, maybe you would just take an avocado on a white napkin and put it in the middle of the table. It's attractive. It doesn't have to be that you go to special college to learn dried flower work, or you go and find out how you can hand make your own napkin. You can take it to whatever degree you like. Or you can simply take a couple of tangerines and just pop a candle inside each one and light it. Cut a little hole, stick the candle in. tie a ribbon around. You have transformed your eating experience from one of rush and tear and conflict to one of reverence. And one word of advice: the worst time to ever bring up subjects that are controversial is when you are trying to eat a meal. And if you're living in a home whereby the people you're sharing your living space and therefore your meals with, if there is conflict there about food, don't discuss it at the table, at the food time. That will result in indigestion all round. Discussions about food and what is and isn't good to eat and what people are and are not willing to consume should take place well away from that table. The intention at the table is one of graceful reverence and one of appreciation and one of nurturing. Have a think about what you take to the table when you sit down. Perhaps you live on your own. If you live on your own, it may well be you don't sit down. You eat on the go because you haven't got anyone to share it with. But you do. You have yourself to share it with. Sitting down and taking the time to make a nice place setting and just stopping the madness just for a moment can be such a gift in your day. Many people are interested in meditation. They think, wow, I'm really good. I get up every morning and I sit cross-legged or whatever it is I do, and I do my 20 minutes meditation, and then they're off for this day of activity. But a meal eaten with graceful reverence is a meal of meditation. It's a meal of time as well as a meal of food. Practicalities. What do you do if you've got a whole group of children running in and out of the house and people visiting and leaving? And I had a friend of mine at one point, and she lives in a community in Madrid. She's Argentinian herself. And she lived in this community whereby somehow Argentinians have discovered that Argentinians are living there in this particular complex in Madrid. Now, all Argentinians that come to Madrid live in this particular housing complex. And you go into this housing complex, you are no longer in Madrid, you're in Buenos Aires. And what absolutely fascinated me was that almost everybody leaves their doors open. And almost everybody goes in and out of everybody else's doors. One thing that I noticed there that my friend was doing, who I think is one of the most loving and effective mothers I've ever come across, is that when a stranger would come into her home, she didn't do what most people I've experienced do, which is offer them something to eat or drink. What she did was, as soon as somebody stepped inside, she invited them to join her in preparing something together that they both could share. I thought, what a lovely idea. Instead of saying, what can I get you to drink? What can I get you to eat? She said, oh, come into the kitchen. And in her case, she would say, let's bake some cookies together. Or let's make a pot of coffee together. Or whatever it was. But they were doing it together to share it together. And to my awareness, people who are interested in pursuing a healthier lifestyle are interested in more than just food. It's not just about food. And because of that, I think that by introducing this heightened level of graceful and loving kindness and reverence to not only your meal times, but in the preparation of the food, you will find that the world starts to open up in a way for you that might be quite unexpected. That via coming in through perhaps the raw vegan path, you start to discover a whole other area of your life that by taking that little shift and making those changes becomes a rich and nourishing thing for you. And I use nourishing in the true sense, but outside of the nutritional sense. It's worth contemplating on. In the family, in the home, people aren't always going to be eating at the same time. Somebody runs in, somebody runs out. If people see an example set by you that food and meal times is a time for slowing down and being present, you may find that the freneticness. I often have sat in people's homes, and I'm rather a one for creating little cartoon images in my head. And I sit in these people's homes, and the first thing that happens is a piece of music starts playing, and it's the Flight of the Bumblebee. And then I start seeing the people in the house with little wings and little yellow and black stripy suits whizzing in and out and whizzing all around the house. I think to myself, how much they're missing by not just slowing down. People do learn by example far more than they learn by what you tell them. So if you want to bring about a change in the way that people in your living space treat food and eat food, if you'd like to bring more reverence and grace to it, there's only one thing you need to do: demonstrate it yourself. When you're in the kitchen, take a moment to think, wow, this food is available to me. I'm not going to starve today. That is a gift in and of itself. I was once working in this hotel. It was an interesting environment, to put it mildly, and a very close friend of mine was the cook at the hotel. I had a particularly interesting job because unfortunately there had been a great loss of staff and a great increase in people coming to stay in the hotel, and the manager had sort of given me an array of hats. One was the barmaid's hat, and one was the lady who does the rooms hat, and one was the receptionist's hat. And many of the guests thought that he had triplets working for him as I would fly from one position to the other. On this particular occasion I was up cleaning a room when the telephone rang to that room. It was coming from the kitchen, so I picked it up, and my friend whose name was Eve, the story about Eve went to a party, and she met this man, and they began to get on very well at the party, and he turned to her and he said, I don't even know your name, mine's Adam, what's yours? True story. Eve was on the phone, and Eve said to me, Rosie, quick, you've got to come down to the kitchen, quick, you've got to come. I put the phone down, and I raced down to the kitchen, and she's standing there at the kitchen counter with this tomato, big beef-sized tomato, as they're called, cut out in front of her. And she said, look. I looked at it and I thought, well, am I being dense or something? It's tomato. And she looked in my eyes, bless her, and she said, do you realise that started as a tiny little plant? And it grew, it rained and it sun and it did all its stuff, and so this little tomato appeared, and it was green and it got bigger and it went red, and I cut it open, and I'm the first person who's ever seen inside this tomato. And you're the second. It was at that moment that I got the message. How much we take things for granted without that appreciation. So I invite you to consider those things, and you'll find that this way of living and eating will take you off on unexpectedly rich journeys. This way of living and eating will take you off on unexpectedly rich journeys. This way of living and eating will take you off on unexpectedly rich journeys. This way of living and eating will take you off on unexpectedly rich journeys. This way of living and eating will take you off on unexpectedly